Well, my dear friends, The Acolyte has finally come to an end. A lot of interesting implications from this last episode. We do have a lot to discuss. I've got to say, generally this series wasn't my cup of tea, but there are some aspects of it which do have a major impact on Star Wars lore, for better or for worse. I want to break everything down. Really happy to have you here today, and if you haven't done so already, please be sure to hit the big subscribe button down below. The Acolyte might be done, but in the coming weeks I've got some really exciting Star Wars content just for you. But no more jibber jabber, let's begin. So now we've had 8 episodes of The Acolyte. It definitely wasn't the kind of Sith series I was expecting, and to this extent there is a level of disappointment, at least for me just personally if I'm being completely candid. I always try my best to be positive, and I want to be making videos and talking about Star Wars I love or I'm looking forward to. We have a slate of potentially very exciting shows and movies coming up, but there was something in the air with this one. Fan frustration finally came to a head. It's been a very stressful time, but I'm hoping that now the series is done, we can look ahead to brighter days for the franchise, and within our communities and discussions, we need a breath of fresh air. As both a Star Wars fan and a content creator, I do this every single day. It's not fun talking about content you don't really like, or you're not too passionate about. I respect everyone who likes the show and all fan opinions, to be honest. I have got a couple more videos on the subject, but I'm looking forward to moving on. A lot of people have told me, Meg, you're negative now and you're toxic and you're a this and you're a that. Look, on this channel, I keep it $1.50. I'm going to tell you if I like things and tell you if I don't. And The Acolyte, just not my cuppa. If it was yours, fantastic, but that's where I'm at. Now, as for episode 8, as for the series ending, I thought that while it was a bit all over the place with some really strange decisions, for example the mind wipe, a bizarrely placed callback to Revan, it also gave us a lot of Star Wars firsts for live action. The best way I can describe the finale, it's not what I anticipated, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a not so good thing, but structurally, a messy finale. There was a lot for a short runtime. I'm left with just as many questions as I am answers. But I'm left with this sense that many things just didn't mesh for me. Let's begin by addressing the elephant in the room. Darth Plagueis is the big bad. The big cameo, the mysterious Sith Master of Crimea. Visually, and this is just visually, he looked great, lurking behind a cave on that mysterious world. And I'm glad they maintained his species from Legends. He's immune, and he looked exactly how you'd expect. Maybe not for this time period. They did change his age from the Legends one. He's meant to be 15 during this time, but he's older, much older. Very similar to the Ki-Adi-Mundi situation, they rectified his age from Legends and provided a different one for Disney Star Wars canon. The James Luceno book, even though for me it's my headcanon, is not official canon. So he's older, he's disheveled, and curious about Osha, his apprentice's soon-to-be acolyte. But we're left with the question, what was the point of bringing in Plagueis in the last episode if they didn't do anything with him? It felt out of place. Unless they do make a second season, and then I'm hoping for a proper Sith story that includes him. Is Osha gonna kill Crimea and become Plagueis' next apprentice before Palpatine? Now there appears to be some confusion over the situation with Plagueis and his relationship to the twins. Some are deducing he learns the power of manipulating midichlorians and creating life by observing what Mother Anastasia did, or that maybe the twins were his inspiration for his own experiments to create life. That's why he's stalking the goings-on of his apprentice's acolyte, because he's thinking, oh, what's this? And learns the ability from them. But I read the situation a bit differently, that Plagueis was involved with the creation of Osha and May, and may have been involved with the witch coven on Brendok. I say this because in the scene where Sol is talking about Anastasia to May, and the ridiculous power only few have ever possessed, it pans over to Crimea, who gives a look as if he knows something about the obsession of his master. Like I say, if they really want to go into Darth Plagueis and show us the inspiration for his experiments, maybe a young Palpatine, before that, Osha becoming his new apprentice, it does need a second season, but at the moment, it does feel very empty. So, one of the major twists, Osha and May are one person. It's like what Torbin said. One of the things I do want to give credit for is the choreography, the fight between Sol and Crimea, and one of the big moments, Osha using her rage to not just force choke, but turn a blue kyber crystal red. Not a first for Star Wars canon, but first for live action. The creation of a Sith lightsaber. Osha makes Master Sol's lightsaber turn red. Unlike the Legends and old canon explanation of how this is done, A dark side user can bleed a kyber crystal by overpowering it with emotions that are characteristic of the dark side of the Force. Anger, rage, hate, fear. This is what Osha does, and as the Vader comics show us, this is a grueling and extremely energy-consuming task. In contrast, when you reverse the process, when you heal a bled kyber crystal like Ahsoka did, according to recent canon, the user feels a very different kind of Force energy. As we spoke about the other day after a recent rumor, David Harewood was not a Sith. He was a senator who wanted the investigation into the Jedi Order. He scolded them for being a system of unchecked power, of hubris, an arrogant order that isn't strong enough to stop those that go rogue. One that claims to control the uncontrollable but, at the end of the day, is nothing more than, quote, a delusional cult. So in the Republic, there is a lot of distrust for the Jedi and the handling of this murder investigation, which as predicted, Vernestra, who I really don't like in this series, placed on Sol. A massive cover-up. And now that we have confirmation that Chimera was Vernestra's student, that is where Season 2 is headed. So Vernestra goes to Master Yoda, which in and of itself presents an array of issues. Were the Senate satisfied with the explanation of the rogue Jedi? Is Vernestra going to secretly hunt down Chimera, with only the High Council being aware? And if so, they're going to have to find more ways for the Jedi to not find out about the existence of the Sith during this time. I've got to say, of the entire episode, the one bit that left the worst taste in my mouth was what happened to Sol. The actor Lee Jung-jae did an amazing job with the material and the script he was given, but at times it feels like you don't understand what Leslie Headland intended. Were we supposed to feel bad for Sol, or was this getting what he deserved? And that's why, give it a few hours or sometime tomorrow, once again Leslie Headland is going to come out and have to explain certain creative decisions. The weirdest one being the mind wipe. And it wasn't necessarily the idea of it, on paper, but the execution. I've said this for many aspects of the show. It's not certain concepts themselves, but the writing and the directing which let them down. And I've got to agree with one review I came across, Tuesday night's jumbled season ending only strengthens my belief that this was a show that needed about 3 more drafts before going into production. And the 2 very fun cameos in the finale can't save it from itself. And we shouldn't be surprised by much of it. Osha going to the dark side in the episode, and May, by dint of losing her memory, goes over to the good guys, was precisely the trajectory we could have predicted weeks ago. And we also shouldn't be too surprised about the fact the Acolyte was hell-bent on portraying the Jedi in the worst possible light, setting up their downfall further down the line in Revenge of the Sith. And also, my dear friends, Han Solo is not the only one who now says, "I'll see you in hell." So, there's another bit of interesting Star Wars eschatology for fans. But the way this Jedi blaming was done comes across as pretty silly because, with what we saw in the flashback in Episode 7, Sol seemed justified in what he saw as protecting the kids from what seemed like a dark side cult that was terrifying and indoctrinating kids. He couldn't see the irony that the Jedi did the same thing. However, based on what Sol knew, his wisdom, his knowledge as a Jedi, it seemed like he thought he was doing the right thing. So with his enormous guilt trip in this episode, you have the sense that Leslie wants us to believe that what the Jedi did was some enormous, horrific crime. They certainly have a lot of blame. The guilt trip, and his subsequent death, does leave an odd taste, at least for me. And another thing I was a bit baffled with is when Osha and May confront Sol, instead of talking about the weird way they were created, he could have explained why he was trying to protect them. He says, quote, "I did the right thing. I was trying to protect you." It would have just taken one of the twins to ask, why? For him to then reply, "She turned into a massive smoke monster. I was terrified. I didn't know what she was doing. And as she started to evaporate, I did what I thought was right. I used self-defense." But the script omits any kind of reasonable explanation that might have changed the minds of the twins. So now I suppose we await news of if we're getting a season 2. Some say it's an impossibility, but Leslie Headland came out again and said she'd like to do it. And not just this, she believes there's a way Jackie Lon and Yord Fandar could have survived. That doesn't make too much sense, but she said yes, definitely. Pablo Hidalgo and I have talked about that. There is definitely some stuff I would love to see come to fruition. But the viewership doesn't seem strong, fan backlash is an all-time high. Are they going to make a second season? They might announce it, keep an eye out. I'll cover whatever news does emerge. But those are some of my thoughts, my dear friends. Just an overview and a breakdown of this episode. It's done, it's over, and now we look forward to Skeleton Crew and Brighter Days. But what did you guys think of episode 8? And what did you think of The Acolyte season 1? Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. If you want to support the channel, the link to my Patreon is down below, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.